Don't you just love how mysterious some of the old Alton Towers adverts are? Just some audio and then Hall of the Mountain King, of course the song that we all associate with Alton Towers, and nothing else, like very mysterious, and I do miss that kind of advert. Welcome to Theme Park Worldwide and the next video in our Remembering series, where I'm going to be remembering Submission. It was a Chance Rides Double Swinging Inverter that actually opened within the X Sector themed area of Alton Towers back in 2001. The ride then closed and operated for the last time in 2013. Before it was then removed. So yes, in this video I'm going to look back on Submission, talk about the history of the ride, my thoughts on it, and just remember what was a big thrill ride at Alton Towers. So here we go. Now, like I said, the ride was located down in the X Sector themed area, right down at the bottom of the area. So you kind of looked at it from all throughout X Sector, and it looked visually very impressive from off-ride. Of course, there was actually two gondolas on the ride. I'll go more into the gondolas and how only one actually operated during the latter part of its life a little bit later in the video. But yes, with Submission, it did have the two gondolas, so it actually looked very impressive to look at from an off-ride perspective. Now, I also really liked the colour scheme of Submission as well. It was painted blue and black, and also with like steel sheeting all attached to it. So it was very modern. It was a very sort of millennium installation really for Alton Towers. Like I said, it opened in 2001. So it was the times are changing, you know, we just moved into the year 2000, the year before, and Alton Towers really wanted a sleek, modern ride to look at, and that is exactly what Submission was. I think it looked absolutely fantastic. Now, along with that as well, each of the gondola actually had the counterweight on the other side of where guests would sit, and that was in the shape of a metal spike. And of course, once it was running the two sides, and then metal spikes spinning around on the ends, just looked fantastic from off-ride. Now, this is for me where I kind of say with Submission that it looks better off-ride than it was on-ride, because it was actually quite painful in my opinion. So I'd love to know your thoughts down below in the video comments, but for me it was really painful, and that's because of the restraint system on there, and also the fact that it held you upside down for a good few seconds in not very comfortable restraints. I just didn't find it one of the most enjoyable rides at Alton Towers, to be honest, but like I say, I did like the look of it. Now, in terms of the queue line, there was no real theming around, but it didn't need it because X Sector is very kind of mysterious anyway, isn't it? And it still is to this day, and you know, so it didn't really need loads of theming around. And with the ride itself being very well themed and impressive, they didn't really need to add loads of little things around the queue line, loads of little details to look at, because people would stand in the queue line for Submission and just look up at the ride, of course, in action, which was great. Now, like I say, it did have the two sides on this, the two different gondolas. Now, like I say, the ride opened in 2001. From 2005, that's when they actually started to not run both sides all of the time, and it gradually became less and less until the last few years of operation, where you would never see both sides running on Submission. There was a lot of rumours at the time, some people saying that they were taking parts off the other side to try and keep one of them going. It obviously, you know, it wasn't even that old of a ride really when it closed in 2013, but yeah, you know, that kind of makes sense now, the fact that yes, they were taking parts possibly off the other side to keep one going. Somebody else said that it was due to electricity and the fact that, you know, it was taking up too much power and causing downtime running both of the sides. So basically, you know, it just couldn't get enough power to keep running both sides reliably. So, you know, there's lots of different reasons, but I don't think we'll ever really find out why. However, yeah, it certainly was a ride that was built to have the two sides running and in operation. Now, when it came to the actual queue line announcements, this is something that I really liked. Basically, I liked everything about it other than the actual ride experience. You had like these mysterious, kind of like the advert in a way, audio and announcements all throughout, telling you about your experience and what's going to be coming up as you make your way onto Submission. Now, in terms of each of the gondolas, they could seat 24 riders on each side. So yeah, you know, quite a good capacity really. I remember, you know, getting like 800 an hour, which was good for a flat ride, especially when it was running, you know, during its first few years of operation. It would really get through the guests at Alton Towers. And you know, this is something what Alton Towers really needs again. They need some more support rides. And of course, check out the video that we put on earlier in the week, you know, all about these new funfair rides that Alton Towers are bringing in. They lack support rides capacity, so that's what Submission was. You know, it was a good capacity filler down in X sector. So yes, there were 24 riders on each of the gondolas, and you had 3 rows facing in the opposite direction. So yeah, I did quite like that. I quite liked always starting off facing over towards Oblivion, over to the left if you were looking at it front on. But yeah, it didn't really make too much of a difference to how comfortable the ride experience was, to be honest, because no matter where you sat, in my opinion, Submission was pretty uncomfortable. In terms of the restraints on there was an over-the-shoulder restraint that came down, and also a bar that then locked forward onto that. At the side as well, where you actually walked onto the gondola, a part actually moved across there as well, just to make sure that your feet didn't stick out and of course hit anything off ride or the other gondola or anything like that. So yeah, that was all kind of built into it. So it was actually quite a technical ride, even though the ride's actual cycle was actually very simple. So once the ride started, you gradually then start to swing in either direction. Now, of course, in the footage you can see here that I took, this was from some of the latter years when it was just the one side of Submission working. But yeah, you can see kind of how impressive it still looked theming wise anyway, with just the one of the gondolas. However, I'll always remember seeing it with the 2 and thinking that it looked a lot better off ride, but it didn't affect the ride experience. Like I said, I wasn't a big fan of it at all. So yeah, you keep kind of swinging forwards and backwards. There's actually stars in opposite ways as well when they used to have the 2 gondolas running. The gondola then continued to tilt further forwards as they gained height with each of the swings, until of course you did a full 360-degree swing all the way over. It then made its way back up and then held you upside down, and this was a very uncomfortable part of the ride. And what you can actually hear at this point was, I don't exactly know what it was, but I think it was just like coins and loose items that had just fallen into the gondola over time, because you could just hear like loads of little bits just dropping into the gondola. Very weird, you know, it put a few people on edge, that did, when you heard this weird noise. But yeah, I'll always remember that. Very strange. Comment below and let me know if you remember that from Submission. Of course, you then continue to swing round before then starting to slow down again, you know. So it was a very simple actual ride sort of cycle, but the system itself, there was quite a lot to it. There was a lot that could go wrong, especially with it being 2 sides, 2 lots of restraints, the door coming across. There was a lot to actually think about in terms of, you know, with the power of that ride. So it does maybe think that that is one of the reasons why, of course, it didn't last very long, really. Like, it's operated for a short time at Alton Towers, you know, considering it was only put in 2001. Of course, then the ride closed at the end of 2013. So, of course, down in X sector, the Smiler opened in 2013. That was the only year where you could enjoy Oblivion, Enterprise, Submission, and the Smiler all together down in X sector. And that was the best year, really, for X sector, in my opinion, because you had all of them rides down there. As much as I didn't rate it to ride, it looked good from off ride, and it was a capacity filler, because then I could go and enjoy some of the other rides, you know, like the Smiler and Enterprise and Oblivion, that having another flat ride in the area just kind of took some crowds off the 2 bigger coasters. And then the ride was completely removed, and then we ended up with a nice little grassed over picnic area, which is still there to this day. However, I'm still thinking that's going to be the location of one of these temporary funfair rides that they're bringing in for this season, but we're still yet to have any official confirmation from the park. So I'm looking forward to seeing exactly what happens. Could be a very fun season with these changes. Check out the news update that we put on earlier in the week if you haven't already seen it. But I would love to know your memories from Submission. Like I say, it was a good ride to look at, but for me, the ride experience I didn't particularly enjoy. But maybe you're different. Maybe you really liked it. Maybe you didn't mind hanging upside down for ages on them uncomfortable restraints. It wouldn't matter to me if it was more comfortable, but they really weren't. I found it very painful, actually, hanging there for such a long period of time. But there we go. Thanks for joining me for another remembering video here on Theme Park Worldwide. There's brand new videos to enjoy every single day here on the channel, so thank you so much for your continued support. That leaves me with one final thing to say. Get out there and keep on riding. See you in tomorrow's video.